We're getting ready to unpack the conversations around the Nigerian Economic Summit. And in case you don't know, this is the Report Desk Africa. And if you're just joining us, well, saved by the bell, because we're just about to start the most crucial part of the conversation. And before we went on the break, I did introduce our guest for today, Team Lead, New Central Business Desk, Nasir Agbalaya, who didn't get the memo. I'll repeat that again. But thank you so much for joining us again.
Great to be here, guys.
Okay, so I did ask a question before we went on break, and just so that I don't repeat, I'll just summarize. So I was just basically saying that, you know, all these things make sense to policymakers, stakeholders, you know, international investors, foreign investors. Exactly. But for every man on the street, I'm sure a lot of people didn't even know about it, to be honest. If you ask them, was any nest of kin or what, you know, so they don't understand, they don't know that this makes any difference for their lives because it hasn't translated into the economic growth. Things are getting deteriorated day by day. So, and Bernard did crack a joke when we went on the break. He said that I likened it to climate change, and he said, you know, nothing else is changing except to climate. So
exactly. In a way.
Yeah.
Exactly.
So what would you say is the relevance of this, basically?
I really love that question. But incidentally, this particular group has been suffering from something which many people who have been doing good have been suffering from, poor publicity. Now, they have been very active over the past years. Incidentally, I believe you all remember Vision 2010. That was one of their brainchilds. Now, before then, they had a research and they approached the then military government in the late 90s, but they handed over to democracy in 1999, and they informed that government, I think it was even the Abacha government from my research, that you need to really go back to where Nigeria was back in the 60s, 70s, where we had multiple revenue streams for the nation. And the government agreed with them. Now, they started first with the pension reforms. I mean, that became reality, incidentally, after we went back into democracy, after 2002 or 2003. Now, another thing that many people are comfortable with now, GSM-4, was part of the research which this group also put out in the late 90s. Now, the Abacha government loved it, moved it forward. The Absalom government also moved it forward. But incidentally, the government of President Obasanjo that actually implemented it, because it had everything, that government had everything on the ground, so they just went for it, also implemented it. And next is one of those particular, but that the major think tank actually did the research. Incidentally, they had an outcome then that the density in Nigeria by 2010 will be 1%. Imagine. And right now we have over 100% of people in Nigeria using mobile phones, although of course different categories of mobile phones, but at least we can communicate easily and faster than before. Now this group really championed that. Not just that, the diversification which we're talking about that, they informed the government of it that, look, when Nigeria became independent, it had many revenue streams. And that was why it was easy. And, you know, there's a record that maybe, I don't know if you're aware of it, that Nigeria is the only nation that went through a civil war and did not have to borrow, simply because we had multiple revenue streams. So it was easy for us. You know, just tighten what you were spending, voila. No debt.
But unfortunately, several years down the line, we are notorious for borrowing, which well, brings me to, you know, the next thing I want to ask. Still coincidentally, right? You know, this particular forum came around the time when millions of Nigerians, I beg your pardon, have been thrown into poverty, further into poverty, because of something we're going to talk about very soon as well, and that's the increase in fuel price, if anything at all. You know, so were there any conversations around how to get millions of Nigerians out of the poverty ratio?
Honestly, this is one of the major headaches of not just the government, really everybody. How to improve the living standard of the average Nigerian. Incidentally, I remember the current Minister of Finance saying that, yes, they have a plan for 20 million Nigerians to... But a contrary statement came from the country rep of the World Bank that they have verified 19 million Nigerians. We'll go to that later on, maybe on a different show or another segment. Now, the thing is, to improve the living condition of Nigerians is not so difficult. It's about improving the value of the Naira, which is the major problem. Now, unfortunately, the Niger has had a terrible beating over the past couple of years, starting from, say, during the lockdown in 2020. I'm going back there because that was when the devaluation of the Naira truly started under the immediate past CBN government. he liberalized it. I know all these are part of recommendations which the World Bank and IMF have given subsequent government in Nigeria, and they've been doing it gradually for the Naira to find its true value. Now, it is easy when you have a thriving manufacturing sector. That formula works because it makes your goods attractive and more people will come to buy what you're manufacturing. China did that. Japan has repeatedly stayed with that formula because they have a vast volume of goods which they export and which also brings in foreign revenue, foreign currency, which is stronger than theirs. Of course, that ensures that they have vast amounts of foreign reserves. Incidentally, our major export in Nigeria is still crude oil. And due to the fact that vandalization, crude oil theft, and it has really hampered us. Now, if Nigeria can manage to increase the volume of oil it exports, let's say to 2 million barrels per day, we won't be where we are now with the value of the Naira. Now, another low-hanging fruit is to increase the volume of agricultural exports, not just raw material, but even refined agricultural produce also. Of course, we all know that the fact that insecurity is ravaging the food basket of Nigeria. The farmer header classes do have subsided, but the lasting impact of this has truly chased away many farmers. Now, once these realities have been reversed, vis-a-vis no more farmer header crashes as we've had of late, that is continued. Now, the policy of the government has been talking about of having dry season farming. We need to truly implement that. When that is done, we have more output, where, irrespective of the season, where we can farm all year round. We have a different story to tell. Now, all things being equal, if all these policies are implemented, no more crude oil theft, increased farming output, by 2025, we'll have a different value for the Naira. A better one, I'd say.
2025, that's a few months away.
I know, it is. I'm not saying at the beginning. Now, at the beginning, the low-hanging fruit can happen only with crude oil because that is a global commodity. Now, if that happens, now we could have more revenue to boost, apologies. Now, to really boost the other sector, particularly agriculture. Cocoa is a mainstay of this nation. Before, we were the first or second. Right now, we are a distant third. I mean, even that third is being threatened by our neighbors, Cameroon. So we can do this. We can feed ourselves. And if we do that, we truly feed ourselves, the need to import food will not be there. Let's not forget that this government said that has already started a 3-month food import with no tax. Why are we doing that? Because food inflation is high. That needs to be reduced considerably.
Okay, so the challenge that I have with all of these things is it's always easier said. You know, when it comes to policy implementation, that's where we see a lot of bottleneck, bureaucracy, different things passing through hands that it shouldn't even have any business with. At the end of the day, they've always said it that the problem of government is the people in government. You know, so. Again, all of these things that you've mentioned, they're attainable, right? And they're part of the goals of the NESG, you know, when they talked about exploring different other options to ensure economic competitiveness, especially, you know, in the global market. So I guess my question to you is, how do we go about, yes, I hear that, you know, these policies should be implemented and all that, but, okay, let me ask it this way. What is the challenge? What do you think, in your own word, like if I were to ask you, what do you think would hamper the implementation of these policies, and how can it be addressed?
Not so difficult. The very crucial thing, the very first thing is political will. That is what solves most problems in literally every nation. Now, I like what Nigeria is going through to what happened to America in the 1920s when the stock market crashed and people were committing suicide because of debt. I mean, you look at your balance sheet, you are seeing red, and there is nobody willing to even pay you. What do you do? I mean, it was very hopeless. Now, the then government, I think it was Dwight Eisenhower, had a formula, targeted the New Deal. They really had to cut down expenses. Now, bringing it fast forward to 2024 Nigeria. This government needs to first cut its own budgets to itself. It needs to cut its spending on itself. You're asking people to tighten their belt, and the government is not doing the same. It doesn't make sense. The government needs to take the bull by the horn and first reduce its own spending, starting with the executive, legislators, everyone, every one of them. Now, when that happens, everybody sees that, oh, the government is serious. And it doesn't need to stop there. It now goes forward to implementation. There needs to be a timeline of execution for literally every project. And with that timeline is now measured and truly followed to the letter, then it's achievable. Let's remember when Governor Fashola was governor in Lagos State. Almost every, I'm not saying he's a saint, but we could see timelines. We could monitor, you could track projects, and everything was working. Lagos truly worked. Now, on a larger scale now in Nigeria, if something like that is followed, literally every sector would work. I remember when former Vice President Yemi Osinbajo took charge of the nation, just for a couple of months, when former President Muhammadu Buhari was in Nigeria, we could see actionable difference, where everything he touched, there was impact. Everybody sat up. Public servants were not late to work anymore. So that is what we need for, say, actionable results, where those in power are accountable and they give practical timelines that, okay, from this time to this time, this is what we're going to do. And they actually monitor it. You'll see a different Nigeria in no time.
Well, we do look forward to seeing a different Nigeria. But just before we let you go, in 1 minute or at the most 2 minutes, can you tell me what your, this is me asking you personally now, what were your own major takeaways from just like Blessing said, a lot of talk many times, no action, you know, nothing changes except the weather. So what would you say were your own personal major takeaways from this year's summit?
Well, I love this question. Well, when the summit started, there were so much delays, bureaucratic delays, where those invited, well, the private sector were there on time. They really came, they were punctual. But unfortunately, the elected leaders were not so punctual. They won. That stalled things a lot. Now, in all, I saw that many international people were represented. And these are what we are talking about. We need financiers. And they came well. We were punctual. But if Nigerians were there, Nigerian elected officials were also there to say, pitch, for instance, state governors, they to pitch their states, they will have people who invest. I mean, from there, you just invite the person to your state and sign whatever contract will be signed. You get the funds. Likewise, the federal government. But unfortunately, that didn't happen. That is what I see was a bit of a failure. But on the bright side, to see someone like the CEO of JP Morgan there, wonderful. It means that Nigeria is still attractive to foreigners.
Yeah, true. Thank you so much, Nasiru, our team lead for the business desk. Just before we let you go, Blessings did say that you didn't get the memo, but I think she's the one who didn't get the memo because she's the only one not wearing glasses.
Oh, so wow! Love
Nice one. Fair.
But thank you so much for joining us, and we do hope
Great
that some of the policies from this economic summit would actually, take off and lead Nigerians out of the poverty bracket.
I agree with you.
Thank you so much.